Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the presentation of colors by the Springfield Police Department Honor Guard. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner by Ms. Carla Wallace. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Wallace will now sing the Star-Spangled Banner.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous night o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Order. March. Ready. Fight.
A very good afternoon to the men and women who serve and protect this capital city from the Springfield Police Department. Very special welcome to our distinguished guests, local leaders, friends, family, and other invitees. My name's Joe Crane from Storm Team 20 at ABC News Channel 20 in Fox, Illinois. It is truly my honor and privilege to serve as your Master of Ceremonies today for this, the 2015 awards ceremony for the Springfield Police Department. Earlier this morning, I was reading through the script of the various awards presentations that will be made today to recognize the dedication, the honor, the integrity, the commitment, the devotion, the bravery that the men and women of the Springfield Police Department put out on the line each and every day on our behalf. And I was reading these stories about that time Officer Mike Badger, who I believe here is with us today, came into the studio earlier this morning to record his weekly segment for Crime Stoppers of Sangamon and Menard County. When I was reading those, I said to him, I said, Mike, you know, I'm reading all these stories here, and the way they read, it almost sounds like your crime of the week, with one exception. There is a conclusion. The bad guys get put away at the end. We're still waiting for the tips to come in, so just kind of a difference there that's worth noting. Nonetheless, we have some special guests with us today, the men and women who served on the Executive Awards Committee, and as I announce your name, please stand up and be recognized, and thank you so much for your help in putting this event together. First of all, the Sangamon County Lieutenant Audie Prongi is with us today. Also, U.S. Marshal for the Central District of Illinois, Brent Broshaw. Feel free to give her applause. Illinois State Police Chief of Staff, Mr. Steve Leiden. Retired Sergeant of the Springfield Police Department, Mr. Joe Pasarik. Lincoln Land Community College Associate Professor for Criminal Justice, Mrs. Tara Walk. And lastly, FBI Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Tracy Smith, unable to be present with us today due to a prior obligation, but thank you all on our behalf for helping put this event together. Now I'd like to introduce some special elected and appointed officials who are attending with us today. First and foremost, the Honorable Mayor for the City of Springfield, Jim Lingfelder. The top cop in the capital city, the Chief of Police, Kenny Winslow. His counterpart at the county level, Sangamon County Sheriff Wes Barr. Our state's attorney, Mr. John Milheiser. And the U.S. Attorney for the Central District of Illinois, Mr. Jim Lewis. Now at this time, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to turn the podium over to Officer Dave Beringer for the Fallen Officers Memorial.
You may have noticed there's a small table at the front of the room to my left. It is a place of honor. It is set for one. The table is our way of symbolizing the fact that members of our profession are missing. They are commonly referred to as fallen officers. We refer to them as brothers and sisters. Since they are unable to be here with us today, we remember them. This table is small. It symbolizes the frailty of the officer against an aggressor. The tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of his intentions to respond to the call to preserve peace, law, and order. The single red rose displayed in a vase reminds us of his friends and families that are left behind. They hold their loved ones' memories so dear to their hearts. The Bible reminds us that we are one nation under God. A slice of lemon on the plate reminds us of the officer's bitter fate. The glass is inverted. They cannot drink with us today. Their chair is empty, depicting no one officer, but all officers that have fallen. We pause now to remember all our brothers and sisters who have passed away or fallen in the line of duty. Forget them, not this day. Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome to the stage Pastor Brian Mills to bring us the invocation.
On behalf of our community, thank you so much for the work that you do. Allow me to pray for a blessing over today's proceedings and over your important work. Let's pray together. Father, you created this world with value, with order, with love, and with peace. And you made us in your image. But that image has been blurred and this world is broken. Today especially, we are grateful for men and women who are not afraid of that brokenness. They do not run away from it. They refuse to neglect it, and they maintain hope that your peace can be restored in our world. Today, we honor those men and women who offer themselves as public servants to protect the people and to keep the peace. Because we believe you have blessed us with that peace, today we ask you to bless us with your presence and to bless those we honor for their service. In Jesus' name, amen.
That. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to bring up the Mayor of Springfield, the Honorable Jim Lingfelder, for some remarks and the reading of the proclamation proclaiming Police Week. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mayor of Springfield, Jim Lingfelder.
Thanks, Joe. We appreciate you coming out, and really Amanda Long for coordinating this. When I was treasurer, we had the nice lunch downtown, and that's one of the things that I was hoping would come back is this luncheon, because the police department is really deserving. Each officer, I hold each and every one of you near and dear to my heart, because you do what others won't do, and that's to protect and serve from strangers to people you know, and we really appreciate the good works that you do. And the couple of people I'm going to recognize, one is an individual I put through the ringer. I'm a firm believer. I come from customer service. I was in banking for a long period of time, and I'm a firm believer in relationships, building relationships. That's what it's all about, especially for Springfield. And I wanted to move ahead, especially for all our departments, but most importantly, the Springfield Police Department, because you are my favorite department. And that's because I always thought it'd be great to be a police officer, but unfortunately I didn't have that courage to take that step forward. But I did put the chief of police through the ringer, through the police forums and all that. And I know I did that, but it was the right thing to do because I wanted to make sure it was the right choice to move Springfield forward in the right direction. So I appreciate the chief and all he's done through this tough year that we're celebrating. But also, I've met from time or two the other individuals that have talked to me, shared your opinions. I always have an open door, so any ideas for improvement, feel free to give me a call. My phone number's in the phone book if you ever, look in your phone book if you have one. But the other one is Josh Stunkel, the head of the President Union, and I really appreciate his dedication. I understand that he's going to be leaving that post, but I really appreciate his commitment and dedication to the rank and file officers, and appreciate all you've done in that role. So with that, I'll keep it short. My dad always said, keep it short, so I'll read the proclamation. And it says, whereas every day Springfield police officers work tirelessly to protect our citizens, enforce our laws, and keep our neighborhoods safe, as they report for duty knowing full well the dangers they face and the sacrifices they may be called upon to make. And whereas we can never fully repay each officer for their service, but we must work to ensure our officers are equipped with the tools and technology needed to do their job. And whereas today we pay tribute to the men and women who serve us with extraordinary bravery, and we remember the heroes who have laid down their lives in pursuit of a safer and more just society. And whereas we owe a profound debt to all those who have worn the badge, and to the families whose support enables them to serve with courage and pride. And whereas today and during Peace Officers Memorial Day and Police Week, we recall the selflessness of our law enforcement officers and their families, and we honor all those who devote their lives to create a stronger and safer Springfield. Now, therefore, I, James O. Lingfelder, Mayor of the City of Springfield, Illinois, do hereby proclaim that May 15th through May 21st shall be Springfield Police Week in the City of Springfield, and call upon all citizens to recognize the work of our officers who have made and continue to make our community safe and strong. So on behalf of the City Council, our residents, we look up to you, we respect you, and we appreciate all you do to keep us safe. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chief.
Now that we've got him up on stage, ladies and gentlemen, no further introduction. Your chief, Kenny Winslow.
Thank you, Joe. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for your attendance today at this special event. It is with pride, honor, and humility that I stand before you today to recognize some of the hard work of the men and women of the Springfield Police Department who went above and beyond in calendar year 2015. It should be noted that 2015 also marked the 175th anniversary of the Springfield Police Department. Each May, we take time out to recognize our officers, our employees, for their efforts the previous year. These officers and employees show dedication to our community, to our profession, by representing the department and themselves in a positive light through their actions and efforts every day. While officers do quality work every day and expect no thank you or reward in return, other than the self-gratification of a job well done, I can say from experience, it is an honor and a privilege to be recognized for one's efforts. As we recognize these officers today, let us not forget our 128 brothers and sisters from around the country who made the ultimate sacrifice in 2015. Every time an officer reports to work for duty, they know that there is a chance they may not return home to their family. No one ordered us into this profession, told us we had to do it. In fact, I believe it is a calling from above. One who has a plan for us, one who watches over us in our time of need and gives us the strength and courage to continue on. It takes a special person to be a police officer, one who is intelligent, can communicate, is adaptable, can make sound decisions under pressure, exercise extreme patience while showing humility and respect for others, knowing that his or her actions and decisions will be scrutinized after the fact. It is often a desire to help people, to change our community for the better, that people enter our profession, our family. However, in these challenging times, it is becoming a more difficult task to find those with the courage, the strength, the desire, the moral compass to step up and serve. Police officers are selfless, giving individuals who don't ask for much in return. Yes, they are a special breed, ones who run to danger and evil as others turn and run away. Yes, they are special. They are everyday real heroes, unlike our sports figures, actors, musicians. In fact, they are your neighbors, our family, our friends, and I'm proud to know that I am honored to serve with them. Finally, I want to thank all the men and women of the Springfield Police Department for their service, pride, and dedication, as well as the community and the mayor for their continued support of our mission. Before I step down, I'd like to recognize some very important people. Would all of the retirees of the Springfield Police Department please stand up to be recognized? It is you who set the standard for us, showed us the way, and it is you that we thank today. Would all the previous winners of the William Herndon Award please stand? All the previous winners of the Porter Williams Award, please stand. Silver Suarez winners, please. And the Abraham Lincoln Award winners, please stand. Again, this is the reason we are here today. We are here to recognize you, to honor you, and thank you for your service.
At this time, will Sergeant Joshua Stunkel please join Chief Winslow here at the awards table for our presentations. As we begin the awards ceremony this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, the committee asks all the recipients to please allow the details of the award to be read first, and then you'll be asked to come forward to accept your award. And I believe we want folks to come up this side to get the award. Momentarily pause for the obligatory picture from our all-star photographer, Brian Bowles, there. So we'll do that as you accept the award. Our first presentation today is a certificate of appreciation in recognition of a civilian employee for their dedication and service to the community and the Springfield Police Department. This civilian employee has been a part of the Springfield Police Department for over 12 years. She is a talented and dedicated public servant who always goes the extra mile and gives 100%. She comes in early, stays late, and always exudes a positive attitude. No matter what the task or how complex it may be, this employee always steps up and delivers. Her drive and attention to detail make her a valuable member of the organization. She's proven that she is capable of multitasking, problem solving, meeting stringent deadlines, while at the same time is always sincere in her efforts. In 2015, she processed 2,500 Freedom of Information Act requests, furnished hundreds of other requests, including expungements and crime statistics. She's responsible for ensuring accurate record keeping pertaining to thousands of police reports and citations. Without a doubt, she has positively impacted her respective division. On behalf of the Springfield Police Department, we thank you for continued hard work and dedication to the department, as well as the city of Springfield. At this time, Donna Brown, would you please come forward and accept this certificate of appreciation?
There you go. Now we're talking shop. Thank you so much. Thank you.
At this time, we would like to award the following officer certificates of appreciation for their dedication and service to the Springfield Police Department and the community. On February 2nd of 2015, Detective Steve Dahlcamp was assigned to investigate a homicide. The suspect had laid in wait for the victim to return home from work, and when the victim was trying to unlock the door to his residence, he was shot several times in the back. The victim died from injuries prior to the officer's arrival. Detective Dahlcamp arrived on scene and began a canvass of the area in an attempt to find other witnesses. Information received revealed that the suspect fled the area by running through the backyard and rode away on a bicycle that he had left in the alley. Officers were able to locate a bike in an alley several blocks from the scene. Footprints were located near the bike that matched footprints at the scene. The footprints, which had a very distinctive pattern, were followed several blocks through yards, across streets, and ultimately to the back of a residence. When this information was given to Detective Dahlcamp, he was able to match that address to the suspect information he'd received during his investigation. With this information, Detective Dahlcamp was able to obtain a search warrant for the residence. Upon serving the search warrant, several people, including the suspect, were located at the residence. Detective Dahlcamp interviewed those found at the residence, and witness statements showed that the suspect left there during the time of the homicide and immediately changed his clothes upon his return. The suspect was arrested on unrelated charges while the investigation continued. Detective Dahlcamp received information that led him to interview several friends and family members of the suspect. These interviews confirmed that the suspect had an ongoing feud with the victim over drugs and had threatened to kill the victim several times over the past few months. Detective Dahlcamp recognized that more physical evidence was needed to back up statements from witnesses. He continued the search for the shoes at the residence and eventually found them in the unattached garage. Additional information was ultimately obtained revealing the whereabouts of the gun used in the homicide. Detective Dahlcamp went to this location and retrieved the weapon. As a result of the investigation, the suspect was arrested, is currently awaiting trial on charges of first-degree murder. Detective Dahlcamp used his knowledge and expertise as an investigator to bring closure for the victim's family and removed a murderer from our streets. Detective Steve Dahlcamp, will you please come forward to accept your certificate of appreciation?
One more, guys.
On September 15, 2015, Detective Tim Saecheck was assigned to investigate a commercial armed robbery. The suspect entered the business with a black plastic bag and a large knife, confronting the only employee in the back of the store, demanding a PlayStation 4 gaming console and money from the safe. The suspect then calmly walked out of the store and left the area, leaving the black bag on the counter. The victim was only able to give a general description of the suspect. With very few leads, Detective Saecheck turned the surveillance video from the store. However, the video was not useful. Familiar with PS4 gaming systems, Detective Saecheck turned to investigating the incident using computer forensics. Detective Saecheck utilized the serial number of the PS4 to obtain a search warrant and gain information about the system. He was provided the times and dates the system had been used and what IP address was used to connect the PS4 to the internet. Detective Saecheck also received the name on the account that registered the PS4 for online play. Armed with this new information, Detective Saecheck was able to obtain fingerprints of the possible suspect and send those to the Illinois State Police Crime Lab to compare them with prints located in the black bag that was left at the crime scene. Now, the crime lab was able to match the prints found on the bag to the newly developed suspect. Detective Saecheck continued the investigation by obtaining another search warrant for the IP address registered to the system and was able to connect it to a residential address in Springfield. One of the known occupants of the residence matched the suspect name obtained earlier in the investigation. Detective Saecheck obtained another search warrant for the residence of the suspect where the PS4 was still being used. While serving this warrant, Detective Saecheck recovered the PS4 and the suspect was taken to the station for an interview. Initially, the suspect denied any involvement with the robbery, but confessed after being confronted with all the evidence. As a result of Detective Saecheck's insight into using computer forensics in his investigation, the suspect was arrested, currently awaiting trial on charges of armed robbery. Detective Tim Saecheck, will you please come forward to accept your certificate of appreciation?
One more, gentlemen.
On October 8th of 2015, Detective Ryan Erwin was assigned to investigate a home invasion. The suspects waited until the victim let her dog outside and then forced their way into the residence. The suspects then duct taped the victim's mouth and forced her to get her keys and purse. The victim was forced to drive to a local bank, retrieve money from an ATM, and then return to the residence. The victim was directed into the residence where the suspects used the duct tape to secure her to a wooden chair. The suspects then ransacked the residence for any valuables and fled, leaving the victim bound to the chair. The victim was able to use a computer to contact a friend who then called police. Detective Erwin began his investigation with an in-depth interview of the victim. He attempted to track the victim's phone without success. After checking with the victim's credit card companies, he discovered her cards were used at different locations. Detective Erwin also received video from those businesses and also from locations near the victim's residence and the initial bank location. After repeated viewings, he was able to identify two separate vehicles that had been observed in several of the videos. Detective Erwin also identified a female who was with the individual using the stolen bank card. The female was interviewed and identified several people involved with the home invasion, including a boyfriend of the victim's grandmother. After several interviews, it was revealed that the boyfriend had organized the home invasion and told the other two suspects that the victim had a lot of money and lived alone, making her an easy target. As a result of the investigation, the 3 suspects were arrested and are currently awaiting trial on charges of home invasion, armed robbery, aggravated robbery, residential burglary, kidnapping, and unlawful restraint. Detective Erwin, through his diligence and hard work, made a substantial contribution to the residents of Springfield by removing several very dangerous people from the community. Detective Ryan Erwin, will you please come forward to accept your certificate of appreciation?
One more.
On December 31st of 2015, the Rocket Stop convenience store was robbed and the clerk was stabbed. A description of the suspects was given, but they were not located the day of the robbery. The case was assigned to detectives Mike Brown and Tim Saecheck for follow-up investigation. Approximately 2 weeks after the robbery on January 15th of 2016, detectives observed an individual at 4th and Stanford that matched the description of one of the suspects. They made contact with the individual so they could identify him, but it did not appear that he was involved in the robbery. Several weeks went by without any additional leads. Detectives Brown and Saecheck decided to talk with the individual again to be sure he wasn't involved. They noted several contradictory statements he made as the interview continued. The detectives gained consent to access a cell phone belonging to the individual in an attempt to verify his story. The information from the cell phone led the detectives to believe he was in fact one of the suspects from the robbery. Detectives Brown and Saecheck continued their interview with the individual regarding the robbery, and they discovered the identity of a second suspect. That second suspect was also brought to the police station for an interview. The 2 interviews resulted in the arrest of both suspects and the crime being solved. One suspect pled guilty and was sentenced to 30 months probation and 57 days in jail. The other suspect is still in custody awaiting trial. Detectives Brown and Saecheck showed great determination and vigilance in solving this crime. The lack of leads didn't deter them from continuing the investigation. That vigilance paid off when they located a suspect 2 weeks after the fact, over a mile away from the crime scene. The idea of revisiting the suspect proved to be the break that was needed in the case. Detectives Brown and Saecheck utilized their interview and investigative skills to successfully close a case that could have easily gone unsolved. They showed their dedication to service by performing these distinguished acts of police work. Detectives Mike Brown and Tim Saecheck, will you please come forward to accept your certificates of appreciation?
One more.
On Wednesday, October the 21st of 2015, Officer Mike Mack was patrolling with a partner when he observed a group of juveniles walk to an abandoned house. Officer Mack was aware that the property was associated with various reports of narcotics trafficking, prostitution, and weapons offenses. Additionally, Officer Mack knew the owner of the property had an agreement to prosecute trespassers. Officer Mack instructed his partner to drive back to the house, at which time he observed one of the remaining subjects reach into his pocket. At this point, Officer Mack exited the patrol car and observed the same suspect pull out a shiny metal object that he quickly realized was a gun. Officer Mack ordered the subject to raise his hands. The subject only raised one hand and appeared to be hiding something with the other. With the assistance of other officers, Officer Mack approached the subjects and placed them in custody. 2 replica firearms were recovered in the immediate vicinity of both subjects. Officer Mack remembered that another officer handled a burglary in downtown Springfield earlier in the evening, in which 2 replica firearms were taken. Officer Mack quickly verified that the replica firearms were the same as those taken during the burglary. Officer Mack reacted quickly, decisively, and with impeccable professionalism, resolving a potentially lethal situation without injury to anyone. As a result of these arrests and the subsequent follow-up investigation, numerous burglaries were solved. One suspect currently in juvenile detention in Sangamon County, and the other is in the Illinois Department of Juvenile Justice custody. Now, Detective Mike Mack, will you please come forward to accept your certificate of appreciation?
One more.
On October the 31st of 2015, officers Jeremy Roberts and Burton Brown observed a suspect vehicle that was related to a homicide investigation. The officers had been provided with this suspect vehicle information at shift briefing prior to beginning their tour of duty. Officer Roberts and Brown verified the license plates matched those of the suspect vehicle and then relayed this information to dispatch. Officers initiated a high-risk felony stop on the vehicle, and the driver initially stopped but then quickly fled the scene before the officers could make contact. Officers Roberts and Brown initiated a police pursuit which lasted several minutes. Officer Brandon Golden assisted in the pursuit, assuming responsibility for radio traffic. Eventually, the vehicle stopped and the homicide suspect was apprehended, leading to a peaceful resolution. Officer Roberts, Brown's, and Golden's attention to detail, courage, and dedication are to be commended in locating and apprehending this dangerous criminal. Although there are inherent dangers that come with vehicle pursuits, all three officers displayed professionalism and skill in bringing the situation to a safe and successful conclusion. The homicide suspect currently awaiting trial. Officers Jeremy Roberts, Burton Brown, and Brandon Golden, will you please come forward to accept your certificates of appreciation?
One more, gentlemen.
On April 27, 2015, Officer Mike Gamble was on patrol when he heard gunshots in the area of 16th and South Grand. Knowing there had been several shots fired calls in that area in the last few weeks, he immediately drove towards South 16th Street. Once in the area, Officer Gamble observed two suspects running southbound. Officer Gamble pursued and apprehended one of the suspects. Meanwhile, the other suspect ran into a residence in the 1500 block of South 16th. After an initial investigation, both individuals were subsequently arrested for various charges, including aggravated unlawful use of a weapon, aggravated discharge of a firearm, criminal damage to property, no FOID card, and possession of a stolen firearm. Further investigation by Officer Gamble revealed that one of the apprehended suspects was responsible for shooting at an occupied vehicle parked in front of a business in the 1600 block of South Grand Avenue East. Officer Gamble's knowledge of his beat, excellent instincts, and outstanding efforts led to the arrest of two suspects involved in the shooting and the recovery of two firearms located inside the residence. Unfortunately, Officer Gamble is unable to be with us today due to his military assignment. Nonetheless, we congratulate Officer Mike Gamble for a job well done. On September 11th of 2015, officers responded to a Walgreens at 1900 West Jefferson for a robbery, in which the suspect implied he was armed and demanded money from the business. Detectives arrived to investigate and spoke to the patrol officers on scene to gather information. Officer Carrie Miller informed the detectives that he had recent contact with a person who knew to be addicted to drugs and matched the description of the robbery suspect. Officer Miller was able to provide the possible suspect's name, his girlfriend's name, the address, as well as a vehicle description. Detectives followed up on Officer Miller's investigative lead by covertly watching the apartment to see if the suspect returned. Well, it wasn't long before the suspect returned, at which time he was detained by detectives. After being interviewed, the suspect confessed to the robbery and also provided information on another robbery that occurred a week prior, which led to the arrest of the suspect as well. Officer Miller's attention to detail, knowledge of his beat, and overall good police work led detectives to the investigative lead they needed. The robbery suspect is currently waiting trial. Officer Carrie Miller, will you please come forward to accept your certificate of appreciation?
One more.
On January 24th of 2015, officers responded to the residence of an 81-year-old female. The woman advised that she had placed her purse on the front porch of her residence while unloading groceries from her vehicle. Upon attempting to retrieve the purse, she discovered it had been stolen. The purse contained numerous personal items as well as keys to her home. Due to the likelihood that the purse would not be recovered, officers on scene provided the female with contact information for social service agencies that might assist with having the locks changed. Upon completion of the theft report, it was turned in to Sergeant Rich Von Barron for review. Sergeant Von Barron verified the details of the incident with the reporting officer and took it upon himself to purchase a new set of door locks for the female resident. With the assistance of other officers, Sergeant Von Barron was able to install the new locks, ultimately providing the female with a sense of physical and emotional security. The purchase and the installation of door locks demonstrates Sergeant Von Barron's willingness to go above and beyond the typical job duties of a police officer. Sergeant Rich Von Barron, will you please come forward to accept your certificate of appreciation?
One more.
On April 22, 2015, officers responded to a residence in the 2200 block of East Cedar regarding a disturbance in which a male allegedly pointed a handgun at his neighbors. The male in question then retreated to his residence, located a few houses down the street. Upon retrieving the facts surrounding the incident, Officer Grant Barksdale responded to the residence of the suspect, took up a position of cover near the front door, and began knocking. The door abruptly opened, at which time the suspect was pointing a handgun directly at Officer Barksdale. Officer Barksdale immediately recognized the threat, repositioned himself behind additional cover, and alerted fellow officers that the suspect had a gun. The house was surrounded, and shortly thereafter, the suspect exited the house and was taken into custody without further incident. Upon Mirandizing the suspect, as well as interviewing witnesses on the scene, Officer Barksdale learned the whereabouts of the handgun, which was ultimately recovered inside the home. Although Officer Barksdale was forced into a potential violent encounter, his quick response to the threat resulted in the peaceful apprehension of a dangerous offender. Officer Grant Barksdale, will you please come forward to accept your certificate of appreciation? Apparently, Officer Barksdale could not be with us, but we thank him for his service. Well, in days leading up to February 8th of 2015, the Springfield police officers were provided with a request for extra patrol on the premises of the Illinois State Supreme Court building. In the early morning hours of February 8th, Officer Jeff Royer was conducting patrols in the general area when he observed two subjects on the grounds and identified their behavior as, well, rather peculiar. Officer Royer approached the subjects and directed them to come to his location. At that point, one of the subjects refused Officer Royer's commands and began to flee on foot. Officer Royer conducted a quick pat-down of the subject who stayed and immediately took chase after the fleeing subject. Officer Royer located the subject in the area of 3rd and Jackson and secured him in handcuffs. Fellow officers, including Officer Chance Tozer, arrived on scene to assist. Officer Tozer began to search the path that the fleeing subject took and ultimately found a 12-gauge shotgun in a nearby dumpster. Upon reviewing video footage, both officers determined the fleeing subject did in fact throw the shotgun into the dumpster as he ran by. Due to the circumstances, detectives were called to the scene and eventually connected the two suspicious subjects to a recent home invasion that left one individual shot in the leg. The keen observations of Officer Royer and the thorough search of the area conducted by Officer Tozer led to the arrest of 2 violent offenders. Officers Jeff Royer and Chance Tozer, will you please come forward to accept your certificates of appreciation?
One more. Good go, gentlemen.
On November 17th of 2015, officers Maxwell Paul and Mike Gamble were flagged down by 2 men in the 2100 block of East Adams. The men, who were associated with a local cab company, wanted to speak with officers in reference to suspicious activity involving one of their cabs. They informed the officers that a cab had been loaned out a day earlier and had since been towed after the driver was arrested. Upon retrieving the cab, the men noticed a shotgun shell on the floorboard. They were concerned about the possibility of finding other illegal items in the van, so they flagged down the officers. Officers Paul and Gamble began to search the van at the request of the owner. The officers located a pair of shoes inside a bag on the rear floorboard of the vehicle, as well as an airsoft gun in the front passenger seat. After seeing the gun, the cab driver told the officers that his friend may have used the gun to commit a robbery. Upon additional inquiry, it was determined the individual who was arrested while driving the cab was in possession of a large sum of money. Both officers recalled a bank robbery the previous day and believed the arrested individual could possibly be the suspect in the robbery. The individual was identified, and a computer check revealed the same physical characteristics of the robbery suspect. The officers had pieced together the following. The suspect in the armed robbery matched the physical description of the friend. The gun in the van was similar to the gun used in the armed robbery, and the shoes worn by the suspect were similar to those found in the van. The officers immediately shared their information with the detective assigned to the case. The detective was able to gather additional evidence in the case, arrest the suspect, and resolve the armed robbery. The investigative efforts, knowledge of recent crimes, and attention to detail by officers Paul and Gamble were important factors in solving this armed robbery. Officers Maxwell Paul and Mike Gamble, will you please come forward to accept your certificates of appreciation?
One more.
And again, Officer Gamble could not be here due to his military commitment, but we again thank him for his service to our community. On March 26th of 2015, Officer Michelle Awe was dispatched to a domestic violence incident in the 2600 block of Sherwood. Specifically, allegations were made that a female, who was also the mother of an 8-month-old child, had been battered by her roommate. Throughout the investigation, Officer Awe learned that the female had recently moved to Springfield from Chicago and was currently residing with her boyfriend and his brother. As the investigation unfolded, it became evident to Officer Awe that the female victim had no immediate shelter for the evening. Officer Awe arranged for overnight lodging at the Springfield Overflow Shelter, as well as provided transportation for the female and her 8-month-old child. Upon leaving the residence and prior to arriving at the shelter, it was discovered that the female inadvertently left without retrieving the child's diaper bag. Instead of returning to the residence, which had the potential of sparking another conflict, Officer Awe chose to take the female to a local grocery store, at which point Officer Awe purchased both diapers and formula for the child. Prior to completing the call for service, Officer Awe provided the female with contact information for numerous local social service agencies. Domestic violence situations oftentimes place undue stress on victims and their families. Officer Awe chose to go above and beyond her typical job duties in an effort to alleviate as much of that stress as possible. Officer Michelle Awe, will you please come forward to accept your certificate of appreciation?
One more.
On March 13, 2015, several officers were sent to the 400 block of South 6th Street for a report of a person sitting on the top ledge of a 6-story parking ramp. Sergeant Ron Williams arrived on the scene and took control of the situation, making sure that the area below the parking ramp was clear in order to prevent a passerby from being injured in the event that the subject would jump or fall. Sergeant Williams responded to the 6th floor and began a conversation with the subject. Sergeant Williams soon learned that the subject was distraught over the death of his brother and was contemplating suicide by jumping off the ramp. Sergeant Williams patiently spoke to the subject and was able to talk him into leaving the ledge and to seek medical help for his suicidal feelings. Sergeant Williams showed tremendous leadership and compassion in how he handled the situation. Sergeant Williams' power of persuasion turned what could have been a horrifying incident into one that was peacefully resolved. Sergeant Ron Williams, will you please come forward to accept your certificate of appreciation? Our next award, ladies and gentlemen, is the Chief of Police Unit Citation Award. The decision by the Springfield Police Department to host the United States Police Canine Association National Field Trials was put into place several years prior to the actual event dates of September 19th through 24th of 2015. However, it was the diligent work throughout 2015 by the USPCA Planning Committee that produced a spectacular 5-day event, culminating with a public event held at Robertson Stadium on the final evening. Members of the USPCA Field Trials Planning Committee did extensive research on previous national field trials to gain an understanding of each day's events and extracurricular activities throughout the evenings as well as the off days. Planning consisted of locating proper venues throughout the city, determining a host hotel that numerous functions could be held, and coordinating with dozens of volunteers as well as other city agencies. The biggest challenge for each of the committee members revolved around securing proper funding through donations to ensure the event would be a huge success. Hundreds of local and national businesses were contacted and were willing to step up and assist by providing a financial donation for the event. The fundraising plan was very systematic and well coordinated to ensure there was no stone left unturned. 2 separate grants were also awarded to be applied toward the event for an additional $15,000. Additionally, planning committee members were able to offer these officers attending an opportunity to see numerous sites throughout Springfield during their stay. Each evening, the members lined up different entertainment options, giving officers attending a chance to unwind from the day's events. Each member of the planning committee obtained raffle prizes, which we ultimately awarded to the participants. Prizes ranged from canine-related equipment to firearms and televisions. Additionally, T-shirts for the event were designed and available for the participants to purchase. Each USPCA Field Trials Planning Committee member was given a specific role and a list of tasks to complete. Now, these tasks would be considered daunting for an individual who is able to commit 40 hours a week to the project. Now, just imagine completing these tasks along with patrolling the streets, which oftentimes includes odd hours. On top of patrolling the streets and completing the necessary tasks to prepare for the event, each K-9 member also had to train their K-9 partner in preparation for the upcoming trials. Clearly, each officer involved demonstrated a willingness to dedicate additional man-hours to ensure the event was a huge success. Now, according to USPCA's National Secretary, Melinda Roop, the 2015 National Field Trials is considered to be one of the best events in the organization's history. Now, the comment solidifies the hard work and countless hours of preparation and dedication put forth by the USPCA Planning Committee. Will the following members of the USPCA National Field Trials Planning Committee please come forward to accept the Chief's Unit Citation? Officer Ron Howard, Officer Ryan Machin, Officer Ryan Maddox, Officer Tim Day, Officer Jeff Coker, Officer Dave Pletch, Officer Steve Termine, Officer Terry Day, and Sergeant Bob Davidsmeyer.
One more, guys. Nice work.
At this time, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to present the Silver Suarez Award. It's awarded annually to the uniformed police officer or officers on active duty performing the most distinguished act or acts of police work during the preceding year. On Wednesday, December 16, 2015, a cab driver was robbed by a fare. Not only did the victim lose his money, but the suspect struck the victim with enough force to cause a laceration needing 7 staples to close. Officer Ricky Castles was responding to the reported robbery when she observed a subject wearing a short-sleeved shirt walking in the area. This person stood out to Officer R. Castles because his clothing was inappropriate for the weather conditions. Officer R. Castles had no suspect information as of yet, but noted the subject's apparel, direction of travel, and peculiar behavior. As the investigation unfolded, Sergeant Gary Castles and Officer Brian Harhausen responded back to the location where the fare originated. Upon interviewing the residents, the officers were able to identify a possible suspect along with a clothing description. Meanwhile, Officer Ryan Maddox, with the help of his K-9 partner, performed a track from the crime scene to a housing complex in the area. Along the route of the track, Officer Maddox located clothing and a possible weapon discarded by the suspect. Detective Jason Sloman, who was working off-duty in the apartment complex, heard the call for service and assisted in the investigation by assessing surveillance video. The video showed a possible suspect enter an apartment. The person seen on video was also identified by Officer R. Castles as being the one she initially observed while en route to the original call. All of the involved officers converged on the apartment in question and located the suspect inside. Upon interviewing the occupants of the apartment, it was learned that the suspect had been at the apartment earlier in the day. In viewing the video from earlier in the day, the suspect was identified as wearing the clothing that matched the discarded clothing located during the K-9 track. The suspect was arrested, interviewed, and taken to the Sangamon County Jail. The coordination of all officers led to the arrest of a dangerous criminal. At this time, will the following officers come forward to accept the Silver Suarez Award? Sergeant Jerry Castles, Detective Jason Sloman, Officer Ricky Castles, Officer Brian Harhausen, and Officer Ryan Maddox. And of special note that many of you on the force know, but those of you who are attending as guests may not know, Officers Castle's father and daughter. How special is that to share this award?
Here we go. One more. Good to go.
Now we present the William Herndon Award. It's awarded to the plainclothes officer or officers on active duty performing the most distinguished act or acts of police work during the preceding year. On December 28th of 2015, Detective Tim Saecheck was assigned to investigate the robbery of a local business. The preliminary investigation included only a suspect description and video surveillance footage in the area. Detective Saecheck reviewed all of the relevant reports and surveillance video. Surveillance video also revealed a potential suspect vehicle. However, the video was of low quality due to inclement weather conditions at the time of the robbery. The license plate wasn't visible, and it was difficult to identify the make or model of the suspect vehicle. Detective Saecheck was only able to determine that the vehicle was a dark-colored four-door vehicle with a sunroof. After numerous hours of vehicle comparisons, Detective Saecheck believed the suspect vehicle to be a 2000 Infiniti 130. A check of 2,000 Infiniti vehicles showed 9 were registered in Sangamon County, and only one of those vehicles were dark in color like the suspect vehicle. Detective Saecheck was able to obtain the name and address of the registered owner along with the license plate number for the vehicle and ultimately located the vehicle at the registered address. He conducted surveillance on the vehicle and later initiated a traffic stop. The registered owner was driving the vehicle and he matched the description of the robbery suspect. Upon further investigation, Detective Saecheck discovered the clothes being worn by the registered owner matched the description of the robbery suspect. A computer check also showed the registered owner had previous arrest for robbery. Detective Saecheck continued his investigation by reviewing surveillance video of the apartment complex where the suspect lived. Video reviewed from the day of the robbery revealed the suspect was wearing clothing identical to the armed robbery, entering his 2000 Infiniti i30. Additionally, the suspect was seen returning to the apartment complex shortly after the robbery was occurred. Detective Saecheck gathered and reviewed all of the pertinent facts prior to making his contact with the subject. The details of the investigation were organized and the suspect was interviewed. He explained the evidence gathered during the investigation would show the suspect committed the crime. The suspect subsequently confessed to the robbery and is currently in custody awaiting trial. Detective Saecheck utilized a variety of investigative tools to resolve the case. The prompt follow-up, fact-finding, and evidence collection were essential factors in making an arrest for the robbery. The case shows the dedication to service that is required in solving crimes. Detective Tim Saecheck, will you please come forward to accept the William Herndon Award?
One more. Good to go.
And our final award of the afternoon is the Porter Williams Award. The Porter Williams Award is awarded for a distinguished act of bravery or heroism by a police officer. On Thursday, September 10th of 2015, Officer Andy Zander was flagged down in a residential neighborhood by a citizen who was screaming for help. The woman frantically relayed to Officer Zander that her husband had just been shot by her father, both of whom still remained inside a nearby residence. Officer Zander immediately responded to the residence, at which point he could hear a child crying inside. Although the exact location within the residence of the suspect, victim, or child was unknown, Officer Zander made a split-second decision to enter. This decision, which ultimately would end up thrusting him into the middle of a violent encounter, was made instinctively and without regard for his own safety. Once inside, Officer Zander encountered a subject sitting in a room with a handgun on the table in front of him. With the child still crying in another room and an admission from the subject on the couch that he was the shooter, Officer Zander, still without backup officers, was able to secure the subject in handcuffs. Within seconds of securing the suspect, Officer Zander located the deceased victim and checked on the welfare of the child. While waiting for backup officers to arrive, Officer Zander simultaneously comforted the child, guarded over the suspect, and kept the woman who flagged him down from entering the crime scene. Officer Zander disregarded his own safety when he entered the residence alone without knowing if the shooter was still present, and again when he confronted and secured the suspect who was still in immediate proximity of the firearm. Officer Zander's actions exemplify a selfless demeanor while attempting to ensure the safety and welfare of others. Officer Andy Zander, will you please come forward to accept the Porter Williams Award?
One more, gentlemen. Good to go.
Again, congratulations to all of our award recipients, and congratulations to the Springfield Police Department on another great year of serving the community and protecting the citizens. At this time, we'd like to bring back Chief Winslow to the podium for some following last-minute remarks.
As we close here today, I would like to thank all those who made this event possible, specifically the following people. The Springfield Police Department Internal Awards Committee. It takes a lot to put something like this on, and the work starts early in the year. The Executive Awards Committee for narrowing down the nominees. The Springfield JCs for their generous monetary donation. Knights of Columbus Council 364 for the use of their facility and their assistance. Brian Bowles for donating his time as a photographer today. Sabrina Nash and James Brooks for the music. Carla Wallace for her rendition of the national anthem. Sarah Garrison, who couldn't be here today but spent numerous hours working on the graphic design of the annual award report. Julie Frevert for her assistance with the annual report. Amanda Long for her tireless effort and the long hours she put in working on the annual report and organizing this event. When we sat down several months ago and talked about how to make this a better event on a shoestring budget, several people stepped up. It's our goal to continue to grow this event and improve it. And your attendance today is proof that we should continue those efforts. Today is not about just recognizing the award winners. It's about all the officers who dedicate themselves to our profession, to our community, to our department. With that said, please be safe and thank you for your service. And here's to the next 175 years.
Lastly, we'd like to conclude our ceremony with Pastor Dave Johnson coming forward to give us the benediction.
Please allow me to just share my appreciation and my thanks for all that you do for our community and to keep us all safe. Know that we are praying for you on a regular basis, and I'd like to pray now as we close. Father God, we give you thanks that there are men and women who are willing to put themselves above others, to risk their lives to protect us. Father, we pray that you would go before them today, that you would go with them, that there could be peace in the city, that, Father, you would protect them, and that, Father, your grace would abound. Father, it's great to be in the presence of some of Springfield's finest and bravest men and women. God, I ask a personal blessing on their lives as well, and their families. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
And on that note, this concludes our 2015 awards ceremony. On behalf of the awards committee members, our guests, thank you all again to the members of the Springfield Police Department for doing all you do to serve and protect all of us. I'm Joe Crane. Thank you for attending and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.